A 19-year-old college student, just home from his first year, slides his car into a shallow ditch on a lonely gravel road in western Minnesota. He isn't injured, his car isn't badly damaged, but he can't get it back on the road. He calls his parents. For nearly an hour, they keep him on the phone, guiding him as he walks through the dark toward a town he swears he can see in the distance. His voice is calm, steady, determined. Then, without warning, his tone shifts to panic. Two words crack through the line. "Oh, shit!" And then, nothing. The call goes silent. The ringing never stopped that night, but Brandon Swanson never answered again. This is the strange disappearance of Brandon Swanson, a case that defies explanation and lingers like an open wound in the heart of Minnesota.
Welcome back to Mystery Trails. Tonight we walk the lonely back roads of rural Minnesota, where a single late-night phone call ended in one of the most haunting missing person cases of the 21st century. Brandon Swanson vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of questions that have never been answered. Brandon had just finished his first year at Minnesota West Community and Technical College in Canby. That May evening, he attended a small gathering to celebrate the end of the semester. Friends later said he had a few drinks, but nothing that seemed unusual. Around midnight, he got into his car to make the familiar drive home to Marshall, Minnesota. Somewhere on the drive, Brandon took a wrong turn. Rural roads in that part of the state stretch like veins across farmland, gravel paths, unmarked intersections, and stretches of darkness where headlights are the only illumination. Around 1:15 a.m., his car rolled off a narrow gravel path and came to rest in a ditch. He wasn't hurt. His voice, when he called his parents, was calm. He told them exactly what happened. His Chevy Lumina was stuck, and he needed a ride home. Brian and Annette Swanson agreed immediately. They got in their pickup truck and drove out into the night to find him. What seemed like a minor inconvenience was about to unravel into something chilling. The search began with voices across a cell phone line. Brandon guided his parents as best he could, insisting he was near the town of Lind, close to Marshall. His father drove up and down the rural roads looking for headlights, taillights, anything that might mark the stranded car. But nothing matched. Brandon grew frustrated. His parents couldn't find him. They kept circling roads near Lind, but Brandon wasn't there. For 47 minutes, the call continued. His father could hear the crunch of gravel beneath his son's footsteps as Brandon decided to leave the car and walk toward what he believed were the lights of Marshall, glowing faintly on the horizon. His parents followed in their truck, trying to coordinate turns and directions. The conversation was steady. Brandon's voice was rational, composed. His father later said he never once sounded intoxicated or confused. He was simply trying to get home. Then, at 2:30 a.m., Brandon's tone changed. In the middle of speaking, his voice cut through the phone with sudden urgency. "Oh, shit!" And then, silence. The line stayed open for a moment, but Brandon didn't answer. His parents called back, again and again. The phone rang, but there was no voice on the other end. That was the last time anyone heard from Brandon Swanson. By dawn, Brandon's parents contacted authorities. At first, police suggested he might have simply run off, perhaps to cool down after the argument of the night before. But Brian and Annette knew differently. Their son wouldn't have vanished without reason. The next day, deputies located his car. It was right where Brandon said it had slid off the road, not far from the small town of Taunton, almost 25 miles away from where he thought he was. The discovery deepened the mystery. How could Brandon, who had grown up in the area and driven those roads countless times, have been so mistaken about his location? Search dogs were brought in. They picked up Brandon's scent and followed it across gravel roads, through open fields, and finally down toward the Yellow Medicine River. The trail stopped there. Some believe Brandon slipped into the river that night, but no body was ever found. Even after extensive searches of the water, banks, and surrounding farmland, nothing turned up. Even stranger, Brandon's phone continued to ring for nearly 24 hours after the call ended. If the phone had been submerged, it should have died instantly. Instead, it rang and rang, as though sitting somewhere in the open, powered on but unreachable. Theories swirl around the case like fog on those empty fields. The most common is accidental drowning. Perhaps Brandon did slip into the Yellow Medicine River that night, his final words a cry of recognition as the dark water caught him by surprise. But the river was searched exhaustively. Even during floods, when the current unearthed debris, no trace of Brandon ever appeared. Others believe hypothermia claimed him. May nights in Minnesota can still be bitterly cold. If he wandered farther into farmland, exhaustion and exposure might have silenced him. Yet, despite hundreds of volunteers scouring miles of fields, not a single piece of clothing, not a wallet, not a shoe has ever been recovered. There are darker suggestions, too. Could Brandon have encountered someone in the night, an isolated farmhouse, a stranger on the road, someone who didn't want him found? There's no evidence for foul play, but his sudden outburst on the phone has fueled speculation. His father was listening closely, and he insists it wasn't fear that struck his son's voice. It was surprise. And then, of course, there is the unknown. Brandon's case has taken on an almost folkloric aura in Minnesota. Some whisper that he walked into something stranger than any earthly danger, lights in the fields that weren't martial at all, or a silence that swallowed him whole. The truth remains as empty as those gravel roads. In the aftermath of their son's disappearance, Brian and Annette Swanson refused to let Brandon's memory fade. They pushed for change in how missing persons cases were handled. In 2009, Minnesota passed Brandon's Law, requiring police to begin immediate searches for missing adults if foul play or danger is suspected. That law has saved lives. It has forced action in cases where hesitation could have cost precious time. But for the Swanson family, it has not brought their son home. He was 19 years old, walking a familiar land he'd known his whole life, talking calmly with his parents, guiding them through the dark. Then a sudden moment of panic, 2 words spoken with startling clarity. "Oh, shit." And Brandon Swanson was gone. 16 years later, there is no body, no belongings, no answers. His trail ends in silence. What do you think happened to Brandon Swanson that night? Did he stumble into the river, meet with foul play, or vanish into something far stranger than we can imagine? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if this story unsettled you, subscribe to Mystery Trails. Because sometimes the darkest roads are the ones closest to home.